So we are now recording. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Andrew and I have actually never met. Andrew left me a wonderful note last year while I was on the 2019 bike ride with support, and I kind of just went back through the messages and I asked some of the people if they'd be interested in doing an interview, and Andrew was willing and happy to help us out. And after a couple of scheduling snafus, we finally got together, and so thank you so much, Andrew, for your time.
My pleasure.
And so I just want to get started with you're actually the first person that's being interviewed who is a male. So that's it's been mostly it's all been female at this point, but
Okay.
so it'll be interesting to hear it from a different perspective. And so yeah, I just want to kind of take us through your story. What happened? How did you end up with CRPS? And we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, so I was diagnosed in 2006, but kind of backing up a little bit. In 2002, after living with a lot of back pain for, I don't know, 16, 17, maybe it was even 18 years. I mean, I started having back pains when I was in college, and I definitely attribute it to, playing sports, football, basketball. The doctor always said, when you're playing basketball, you're jumping up in the air and then you land and you're compressing your spine.
Right.
So after that, after a lot of years in 2002, I mean, I couldn't function. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't stand down. I'd have tears in my eyes. Getting in and out of a car was tough. And so I went, and I would see orthopedic doctors, but I never went and saw a surgeon. And, I saw a rheumatologist, and they're all like, you know what, you need to see a spinal surgeon. If you want a chance at feeling better. And I was very scared because, I was worried I'd lay down on that table and I'd never walk again.
Right.
And, but I found a guy by the name great doctor in Chicago. I was living in Chicago at the time. And the guy was just so confident. He answered all my questions, and, the main one being, when I lay down on that table, am I getting up and walking? And he's like, you're absolutely walking again. He's like, we wouldn't be doing this if, there was any question there. So I had my first spinal fusion in 2002. It was probably a 9-month road to recovery after that. 6 months I couldn't do, I was able to do a little work, but, there was a lot of time where I couldn't drive, and then, months and months of physical therapy. And I started leading a normal life again. I'd say probably after about a year from the surgery. Well, fast forward to 2006, because I was good. And
Yeah.
the only caveat was that the doctor said, listen, when you have one spinal fusion, he's like, a lot of people end up having another one because you're now restricting that one spot in your back. And so if I ever see you again in the future, I hope I don't, but I just might. Well, fast forward to 2006, we were coming down, my family and I were coming down to Arizona for spring break, bringing the kids. And on the flight down, I had said to my wife, I'm like, honey, I'm like, my back is killing me. And my hip was bothering me. And I just had this radiating pain. And, I don't know, maybe I don't know what it was. Well, that was like a Friday night. Saturday morning, I got up. I actually played golf Saturday morning and with my father-in-law. And then by Sunday, I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
And the problem was that now we're in Arizona, and we were here for, I don't know, probably like 10, 11 days. So I was sort of stuck, and I went and saw a couple of doctors. I would see massage therapists and, who would give me that instant, feeling of feeling good, walk out of their office, get in the car. And then I'd be like, oh my God, I mean, what is this? And it was just, it was pain I never, ever felt. There was one day where I wasn't sleeping. And I woke up and I told my wife, I'm like, we have to go to the hospital. And she's like, go get dressed. Because I was just wearing a robe. And she's like, I'm like, get dressed. I'm like, we're going to the hospital. She's like, you're wearing a robe. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, just get me. And, they were like, yeah, you probably like, twisted something. And, they did some x-rays, and they're like, they were, I wouldn't say nonchalant about it, but they weren't very aggressive. they really weren't sure what it was, but they probably gave me some painkillers, and I suffered through that next 8-9 days while we were here. Well, when we got back to Chicago, I called my doctor, my not the spinal guy, but just my regular doctor, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, I cannot function. He's like, you're gonna go get an MRI this afternoon. And so I went over and got an MRI. I wasn't even out. I didn't even think we made it home. And the doctor called me. He's like, you need to go see the spinal guy. He's like, you have a laterally herniated disc. It's crushing nerves, and you're going to need surgery. So I called my doctor, and I'm like, can I come over? I mean, I probably saw him the next day and was admitted, I think, within probably like 24 hours. And they
Wow.
did not only the fusion, but they had to do a laminectomy as well, because they had to remove part of the bones, which is what a laminectomy is, so that they could even get to the disc and remove that, because it was just sitting on this nerve now for the better part of about 2 weeks, maybe even just
Right.
over that.
Yeah.
Well, in the hospital, so that they felt the surgery was a success. I had my back pain was basically, for the most part, alleviated, other than like a lot of surgical pain. But in my lower left leg, I had pain still that I had never ever felt. I mean, excuse me, no one could touch my leg. I remember like coming out of the surgery and like pulling the blankets off my leg, and I mean it was not a good scene. My wife actually passed away unexpectedly about 4 years ago.
Oh,
She
sorry
had
about
been diagnosed, some, God, now it'd probably be 25 years ago. She was diagnosed with CRPS, made a full recovery.
that. Wow.
Um, she had been she had been in Chicago, and she got hit by a van, and by her foot, and ended up having this CRPS. So I'm sitting in the hospital, and she's giving me this worried look, because I didn't even know what CRPS was. I don't even know if she and I had even talked about it, because I wasn't with her when this had happened to her. And she's giving me this worried look, and I'm like, what's going on? She's like, this is not good. Because she's seeing all these signs
Right.
that she had had. Um, so, the spinal guy came in. He's like, it's way too early to think of something like, CRPS or RSD, which is what they used to call it. But it was, brutal. I mean, fortunately, my back was, I had a lot of back relief, but again, this residual pain in my leg was just, I mean, I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. Um, and
Wow.
so probably there wasn't really a lot we could do with it, because first of all, I'm taking pain medication anyway to recover from the surgery, as it was. And, we probably went, I'd say maybe a month or so, maybe even 2 months before I said, I can't deal with this. I know the difference between back pain from having now had 2 back surgeries to knowing something else isn't right. And this isn't even in my back, it's in my leg. So we went and saw a doctor in Chicago. I don't know if you want me to mention doctors' names or not.
Um, we'll go without them for now. I
Okay.
haven't made it. Yeah, I haven't really done any
Yeah.
doctor endorsements at this point.
Yeah. And it's totally not, not whether it's an endorsement or not an endorsement. I mean, I went to, one of in Chicago, there's basically 3 major hospitals. I went, when I'm talking major teaching hospitals. So I actually went to the doctor that my wife had seen, a couple decades before. Um, and because he's one of the leading guys. He's like, at the time he was like, I don't know nowadays, but he was like number 2 or 3 in the country on CRPS and other type of nerve related type pains.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I went and saw him, I mean, again, you sort, not a quite worried look on his face, but he knew
Right.
that this is
Yeah.
probably what this was. Unfortunately, there wasn't much they could even do, because I'm wearing a back brace for 6 months, and because I've got to let this fusion heal,
Right.
and I still have to try and do some physical therapy to not try and build some strength. So, I mean, I literally went, you know, God, I mean, almost like 9 months dealing with this pain, other than being able to take pain medication, which, I'm so glad that I don't have to do that. And, I don't take that anymore.
Yeah.
So, fast forward about 9 months, we're talking now. So my surgery was in March of 2016 or 2006, excuse me. So now we're talking, right around, beginning of 2007, that I'm now able to really do something with this pain doctor, who can deal with the CRPS. And his first thoughts were like, we're going to try some, local treatments, and they do things from, and some of the stuff I don't remember because it's been so many years.
Right.
Um, but one of the, I did this. Oh God, it's like a block, almost like a nerve block.
The nerve block. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it had a different name for it. And for some reason, I just can't remember what it was, Eric. I'd have to look it up. But we did a series of these nerve blocks. They were very like short-lived relief. I mean,
Right.
obviously when, because you're not under a general anesthesia, but you're under a, sort of a local.
Yep.
So you feel great. I mean, I'm like, wow, I have no leg pain. Well, it's
Right.
because it's numbed, and it's artificial relief.
Exactly.
We did a series of those. Nothing was, nothing was helping. I mean, within days, or as soon as that stuff would wear off, um, it was the same old thing. And at this point, I'm now taking, I would say, close to 30 pain pills a day. I
Wow.
mean, it's
Jeez.
just, and I
Oh
mean,
my
which is
God.
just, yeah, which is, again, that's not good.
Right.
I could feel my body just like, you know, in knots, and, my stomach was always bad. I think, personally, my personality changed,
Right.
because I was just so miserable. I probably wasn't I wasn't like some tyrant, but I probably wasn't the nicest person to be
Right.
around,
Yeah. Of course.
understandably so. Um, so we tried these nerve blocks, and for, I mean, months and months and months, because you can't do them like every day or every
Right.
week. You have to space them out. So we tried that. That didn't work. Then the next thing the doctor said was like, maybe we could try a um, a pain stimulator, where we would try to intercept, in a sense, the pain signals,
Right.
um, receiving from the leg, because that's, in a sense, that's what I don't know, that's, in a sense, what CRPS is. It's sending these, like false pain signals to the brain, and
Constant.
because
Yeah.
my leg looked pretty good. I mean, the color was off a little bit, the temperature was off a little bit, but it didn't look bad. It just, I mean, it was just excruciating.
Right.
So we said, we could try the stimulator, and see if we can intercept the pain. So the process is, you do a trial. We did the trial. I felt like I was getting some relief. And, but you have to remember, I'm still taking a lot of pain medication at this time. So it's, you know, you- but I assume it's working. So
Right.
after this little trial, I'm like, yeah, let's put this thing in there and let's see how we do. So it's just probably like, another month or two, because I've got to get approval, to do this. And,
And it's an
it was,
invasive surgery. It's not like a, you don't just put a thing on the side of your belt and.
no, 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 no. This is a surgery where, you're under a general anesthesia. They have to, in a sense, make a pocket. The stimulator goes either in the, in the front, sort of like the bottom, like towards the bottom of your stomach, or mine is actually located on the side,
Okay.
more towards the back. And that was just a personal preference. And, he had said, some people don't like it in the front because they feel like it's, they notice that it's there more as opposed to the
Right.
side. So
Right.
I did mine on the side, which I guess, from what I've seen, other doctors, because I don't live in Chicago anymore, most of them are in the front. So,
Uh,
but it's either here, neither here nor there.
yeah.
So I had the stimulator put in. And again, it's not something I could really tell completely how much it was helping or not helping, in the beginning, because I'm still taking these pain meds, so we're trying to get me off on some of those. I do feel some relief in the knee area, but it was that like the front of like your shin, below the kneecap to the top of my ankle, that was still so raw, that burning,
Yep.
throbbing sensation. And again, we had to give it time because, I'm still dealing with this, surgical pain of having this thing put in.
Right.
So, you know, I gave it time. We did, adjustment after adjustment. I mean, and this is now going over probably like another year, maybe year and a half of dealing with this because we really I wanted to make it work.
Right.
Uh, because I didn't know what would I do if it didn't work. So, we tried and tried and tried. And ultimately I said to the doctor, I'm like, listen, I go, it's just not enough. I'm like, I can barely wear pants because of the rubbing. I'm like, I'm wearing shorts. I live in Chicago.
Right.
It's not 70 and sunny every day. And if I don't wear pants and I wear shorts and I go outside, now I've got the cold wind air blowing on my leg,
Right.
which is not even just as bad. So, you know, talked about some other things, and he said, well, one of the things that we could try would be like a series of ketamine infusions.
Yep.
I'm like, what's that? He's like, it's a tranquilizer, and we put you underneath, and we're going to do a series of them. You'll do them every week. You'll be out for anywhere from 3 to 6 hours. I know people that have done it. I know in other countries, I've heard people for like a month at a time. My docs,
Yep.
they couldn't do it in the United States or not. I don't remember, but they weren't that aggressive. I'm sorry that there's noise
Yeah, no
outside.
worries.
So we did these series of ketamine infusions. Where, again, you're being put under it's not like an anesthetic, so you're being put
Right.
under tranquilizer. Um, it was it was not a lot of fun. I was sick as a dog after every one. I mean, uh, I've never had cancer, knock on wood, but from when I've heard like people that talk about having cancer and going through chemotherapy and radiation and how sick they are after, that's how I felt.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, I'm like, I've got to keep trying to do this because I've got to get something that will work. And so I did. I mean, like week after week. And I'm my wife, and this is just brutal because now she's like, every week I'm being put under an anesthetic.
Right.
Sense, hoping I wake up, which I did. When you come out of um, the ketamine, when they bring you out of the ketamine infusion, there's a lot of hallucinations, and it's almost like, imagine if you were to take, like a hallucinogenic
Right.
illegal drug. And
Wake
I
up and
mean,
that's what you're feeling like.
yeah, I mean, it just, plus I'm sick. I mean, most days, and we only lived like 10 minutes from the hospital, I couldn't make it home without getting sick.
Wow.
I have to stop the car at least once because it was just, it was awful. Well, after 13 weeks, I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. I can't be,
Right.
as much as my leg is killing me, I can't take this, like being sick. And I didn't love the idea of like having, it's not a general that you're under, but just being knocked out, almost
Right.
like an induced coma every week,
For
for,
hours at a time. Yeah.
yeah, hours. Right. It's not like, 15, 20 minutes. I mean, hours and hours and hours. So I said, no, I can't do this anymore. And then at that point, I'm looking into things like, maybe I should try like a hyperbaric chamber, because there was
Yeah.
some stuff that maybe people do that. Unfortunately, at the time, well, even today, I'm sure insurance doesn't cover any of that.
No.
And if somebody would have covered it then, it guarantee you, and they didn't, it's definitely not covered now. But I
Right.
never went that route. I talked to my doctor. He's like, listen, he's like, I can't tell you that it won't work. He's like, but there's just really not, there's really no proven medicine, proven theories or results that's something you should even try. And I feel like you're just gonna, and it was hundreds of dollars just to do it per session. He's like, I think you're just chasing, you're
Right.
wasting good money.
And it's, I
So,
mean, and you can't even blame you for wanting to do something like that because you're just, You're going
Yeah,
from treatment after treatment, trying to find something that works, and you're just
I would,
hoping.
Eric, I would have done anything. If somebody said, go stand on your head in the corner for 30 minutes a day and your pain will be gone in a week,
Done.
I would have done it. You know,
Absolutely.
I would have done anything. And, I think what made it even harder on my family is that I wasn't, because I was so miserable. Again, I wasn't nice. And I ended up having to, in addition to trying to deal with all the pain, I had to go to therapy every day,
Right.
almost like to a therapeutic clinic, because I just wasn't fun to be around anymore. And, um, we had in 2006, when it happened, our daughter was maybe like a year and a half old. I have two boys from my first marriage who are, they're now in their early 20s, early to mid 20s, I should say. But I just, I need, my wife's like, you need something to try and help you deal with what's
Right.
going on.
Yeah.
Um, so that was bad. So, after these infusions, nothing really happened for a while. And, I talked to the doc about next steps, and he's like, cause I felt that, I was still using the stimulator, but I didn't feel like it was really, I didn't feel like it was enough. And I'm like, there's gotta be something else. I'm like, I can't be taking these, these pain meds every day the way I do. It's not life. I'm not leading a normal life. And he's like, the next thing that we could try would be a intrathecal pump. So instead of taking all this oral medication, um, they would use an intrathecal pump. They would utilize some type of um, um, narcotic medicine um, that you'd get on a constant flow as opposed to taking pills. And that was the other problem with the pills is like, instead of taking those pills on a regiment basis, like, okay, at 8 o'clock, then 10 o'clock, then 12
Right.
o'clock,
Right.
sometimes I take it at 8. Well, sometimes I take it at 8:30, and so it wasn't, even though I had so much in my system, it wasn't a continual
Right.
flow.
And
Um,
when it finally did come in, it was like you were already in pain, so it was your body's reacting instead of being
right.
premeditative about the drugs.
Absolutely. You're playing catch up at that point.
Right.
And as I would tell anybody that has any kind of surgery, if a doctor prescribes you some type of pain medication, you got to take it.
Right.
And, because if you get behind, doing so, you just can't catch up. So whatever it is, whatever, not CRPS related, just tells you to do it, just take it. Doesn't mean you're going to be addicted or anything like that. It just means that he's not prescribing because just to prescribe, he's doing it because he knows that you're going to need to get through it. So we start talking about this intrathecal pump, and I'm like, well, what does that entail? He's like, well, like, we did for your stimulator, probably on the other side, we're going to have to make a pocket and we'll run on, a catheter from the pump. It will then go to the intrathecal space in the spine, and we'll do a test before um, implant this, so that we with like it wasn't. I'm trying to think what they called it. Wasn't fluoroscopy. I am drawing a blank, Eric. They did something where they were able to pinpoint the exact spot where the catheter tube should be placed in the
Interesting.
intrathecal space.
Huh.
So that was like another procedure, but I had to
Right.
do it. Um, so the guy's like, I think this is what we're going to do, and we'll do the the intrathecal pump. Well, the insurance company was like, well, this is still pretty aggressive. You've already had a stimulator, and you've tried this other stuff. We don't want to
Right.
just chase good money after bad. They were like, we're not doing this. And I'm like, how could they not do this? I'm like, my doctor wants me to do it. Well, I ended up having to fly with my wife to the Cleveland Clinic to see the guy who was really the guy was
Right.
CRPS. Um, and if you ever need names, I can get you these guys' names.
Just curiously, is it the guy in Florida, the Cleveland Clinic that down there?
No, wait, what'd you just say?
Was it the Cleveland Clinic in Florida, or was it like where did you go to
Ohio.
Ohio? Okay.
Ohio.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I went to Ohio.
Okay.
Um, so I went and saw this doctor in Ohio, and when I met with him, he's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Because I feel like if I get like a second opinion, another letter, it'll hold a lot more weight with the insurance company." He's like, "You definitely have it." He's like, "I know the doctor in Chicago." He's like, "He's not going to make a misdiagnosis." I'm like, "Doesn't matter. You got to do it." So he wrote a letter, and because of the letter, they said we can, the insurance company, I think, put enough pressure on him that, I was
Right.
able to get intrathecal pump. So this is now, God, it had to be, we had to be maybe at the end of '08 when I
So,
got this,
so what?
2000. So I was able to get the intrathecal pump. And probably the best thing about it was that I was able to stop taking all the pain
Right.
medication.
Right.
I mean, there was no, and I knew that going in, and I was happy about it. That I didn't, there wouldn't be a need to pop these, 30 pills. And I did have to come, they had to be weaned off it and had to use other medication to do that, to eliminate the withdrawal. Because even though I was getting that narcotic, he's like, we have to be very, we don't want you to, we know you got enough to deal with. We don't want you to have to start dealing with withdrawals as well.
Right.
So I had the intrathecal pump implanted. Um, it's a combination in my pump. It's Dilaudid and clonidine. They did try other um, medications over time just to see, like from a non-narcotic standpoint. And I can't remember what one of them was called. I want to say it was baclofen, but I don't think that's correct. But there was another medication that I know that they did try in the pump at one point, which was it was giving me good relief, but I couldn't remember anything.
Right.
And at this point, I am driving a car because I am working a little bit, and I remember I probably went to go see my boys, and I was driving home. I knew I had to go home, but I didn't know how to get there,
Wow.
and
Oh my God.
like I got home,
Right.
and I had to like pull over and just like, all right, figure this out. And I called my wife, and she's like, "I know where you are. You know where you are,
Yeah.
and we're just gonna get home." And so I did, but we took that medication out right away. And God, it's killing me what it was, but it was. Ugh, if I can think about it, I'll text you what the medication is.
Yeah. No problem. Absolutely.
But we try, and and it's sad because again, I was getting great relief from it,
Mm.
and it was a non-narcotic, so they felt like, if we can do this, we'd rather have that in your system than, flushing you with Dilaudid in your body, which is Dilaudid is, a narcotic.
Yeah.
Clonidine is the acting agent to make it work even better. So I went back on the Dilaudid and the Clonidine. Um, um, long term, I still have this pump in my body. I've actually had to have it replaced once because the pumps don't last forever. They last, I think the first one was about 6 years or 7 years. Um, I've had it replaced once. I'm due to get it replaced mid next year. Probably do it in the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
which certainly concerns me because my pump, when it was replaced the first time, was done by my original doctor. Um, Now I could fly back to Chicago and he could do it, but I found a pretty good doctor out here in Arizona, and I do trust them. Um, in terms of replacing that, it's going to have to be done.
Right.
Um, and I do wonder like how much it really does help. I mean, I get pretty good relief. I mean, there's days where it's still brutal.
Right.
There's
Of course.
days where it's not as bad. I think being out in Arizona with the hot weather has done wonders for my life.
Yeah.
Uh, because first of all, it's real easy to wear shorts out here. Every but the heat, just, I mean, I just notice it, on a daily basis because, and the occasional day that it rains out here, which is almost never, I see how much it bothers me. Or
Right.
if it's, we don't really get cold spell. Our cold spell here is like 50 or like 45 degrees. We don't get, the sub-zero Chicago
You're
cold
right. Yeah.
winters. But I mean, it has helped, and where I can return to a pretty good lifestyle. My personality's much better than it ever was. Um, does it, being somebody that's almost 56 years old, worry about continuing to pump this into my body? Yes. Am I concerned about how how much does it really help, or have I healed? Have those nerves regenerated enough?
Mhm.
Um, and we've tried to like reduce the pump a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, you really haven't noticed much either way, but again, the doctor's like, part of this intrathecal pump system is I have, it sort of looks like a little pager, and this little paging device allows me to um, give myself what they call a bolus. A bolus would be like an extra shot of medicine
Mm.
in between like the continual, 24-hour
Right.
flow. And she's like, well, you don't use it a lot. You do it on occasion. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's what it's intended for. It's not,
Right.
it's, it's not like I'm doing anything wrong. I mean, it's there to use if I think I need it. And, and sometimes I do use it. Again, my question is it because I just, my legs bother me so much that I can't sleep, or I'm just out of my mind? And does it relieve the pain, or does that extra narcotic just knock me out, um,
Right.
fall asleep? So there's still, these questions that I do have. Um, I don't complain about it because having gone to these pain doctors for now, I guess I'm into my almost 15th year of
Right.
dealing.
Yeah.
Eric, I see some of the people in the waiting room, and their arms or their legs are contorted, through pain, and or they're in a wheelchair or with walkers. I don't use a walker. I'm not in a wheelchair.
That's
um,
amazing. Yeah.
I might be limited to some of the things that I can or that I can't do. When I see some of these other people, I'm like, you know what, just shut your mouth and
Yeah.
just keep going forward. And I'm try to be a very positive person. I mean, I don't think I've never said to myself, so I'm gonna be like them one day. Um, you know, it's because theirs is even much worse than mine could ever be. And some of the are not necessarily, they could these could be fibromyalgia patients.
Right.
Um,
Right.
it's not necessary. They're not the practice. That I go to is not just CRPS, or was not just CRPS in Chicago, or the clinic that I go to in Arizona,
For sure.
because they see cancer patients. So there's uh, those cancer patients are getting pumps or injections or treatments. But I see people that are far worse than I am, um, and just kind of keep my mouth closed and hope that today's a good day.
Right.
And if it's not a good day, maybe I have to do an extra bolus. Maybe I have to take it easier that day. I hope that, as I said, I'm lucky being in Arizona where it doesn't rain. So,
Yeah.
which has always bothered me. So it's like, I don't have, I don't have to look at the room. Like, I never had to look at her anyway for the last 15 years. I
Yeah.
knew, and,
Right.
I could just tell because or if it was going to be, super cold outside, I could just tell. Um,
Yeah.
and my family knows, and they've always been very supportive, which is great, because CRPS is something that's very hard to, it's not like a broken bone, or if you have a cut on your leg, you can't see it. And excuse me, because you can't see it, other than like pain, anguish on somebody's face,
Right.
it's very difficult for people to understand. And you know I, as unfortunate as I've been in terms of getting this and having back pains, I mean, I know what it could be.
Right.
And what, as I said, I wouldn't wish, I don't want anybody to get sick or anything like that, but I wouldn't wish this to anybody,
Yeah.
because it is so difficult, so many people are withstood. And the whole thing with the pain medication, which is, and they're probably maybe some people were prescribed too much, but it is real, uh, but it is to a lot of other people. It's like this phantom thing that they just don't. It's very difficult to understand. Like like you hurt your finger, and people see that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Like,
right when
yeah,
you run, and you're like, oh my God, Eric hurt his finger. Hope he's feeling better.
right,
If somebody sees you walking, they don't look at me like, oh my God, Andrew has CRPS. I mean, I hope his leg's feeling okay, because
right.
they don't know.
No idea,
And
of course.
they wouldn't look at my leg and be like, oh my God, how come his left leg, the color's a little different than his right leg?
Yeah,
They're not leg, so they're, well, how come it's a little colder than his right leg, or why is this leg? You know, that's that's the hard part of CRPS, or people with fibromyalgia or nerve related pain
yeah,
that people don't know about.
yeah.
And
It's that it's like called an invisible illness. Essentially, it's like
yeah, it is definitely, it's an invisible illness, but to those that have it, it's very visible.
right,
um, and
right,
hopefully, people that do have it, Eric, they can get the support that they need, first and foremost from their family. Because there was some, not of my not of my wife or my kids, but there were some people that were like, are you sure? You sure?
right. Yeah, you look good to me, Andrew. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well,
Right. Yeah.
you do walk, you can drive a car,
Right.
yeah, but and I'm very careful. I mean, lifting, I don't used to love lifting weights when younger. I don't do any of that. I mean, so cautious, um, because part of, and I sort of skipped this. They attributed what happened was back in 2006, and I know the date. It's March 26, 2000. When we flew down to Arizona, I'm convinced I picked up a suitcase that was either a little heavy, picked it up the wrong way.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
I truly feel that's what's this off, and so I'm very, very careful because
Oh
first of
yeah.
all, I don't use them, and I know that now, 'cause I've seen people that have had them. They're less invasive. You know, they've definitely progressed in the last decade and a half. But I'd rather just be careful about what I do,
Right.
um, because you know I wouldn't want it. For right now, it is in my left leg, and for the most part, it's roughly knee to the top of my ankle. It doesn't go on my foot.
Hmm.
It never has.
Wow.
So when which I feel so lucky that it's sort of just
Yeah.
that it
It
is,
stopped.
because I couldn't imagine it being in your feet. You think about people with diabetic pain, and the pains that they suffer in their feet. And in my, at times I've thought it was in my right leg as well. But I just when I start to go there, I just sort of like, no, it's not there. It's in my left leg, and I just try and stop myself, because as real as I mean, there's still that mental game you've got to play with yourself, to get through this.
Right.
And as I said, I is unlucky I've been in life having, had this. I mean, my first spinal fusion, Eric, I there's no one else to blame but myself. I mean, I played very hard when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and you know, surprising more people. When I think about professional athletes, and I was not a professional athlete, um, that they don't require even more, because they're getting hit and this and that, and the impact. Um, but
Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties and spotty Wi-Fi connection on my part, my conversation with Andrew is unsalvageable for video, but it was great to hear his story, and I think one of the key takeaways is that everybody's different in the one thing that is similar amongst all CRPS warriors is trying to find a cure, a way to get into remission, something to help them ease their pain. And it's clear, I mean, Andrew's journey took years and years, and he's the first to admit that although his pain has eased, and though he's gone through multiple surgeries, it's not healed. He's not in remission. He just has less pain. His pain is more manageable. And for right now, really managing pain is one of the top goals for CRPS warriors. So thank you so much for watching this video. This was a long one for sure. For those of you who made it this far, I super appreciate it. In the description below, you can like our Instagram, Facebook pages, as well as don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're currently fundraising for RSDSA, our nonprofit partner. Interestingly enough, our next video will be about someone who works there, so we'll be interviewing her. She's a volunteer, and so we'll go through her story and how she got into RSDSA and hear a little bit more about the organization at large. Anyway, thanks again so much for watching this video and watching all of our videos. A lot of engagement so far, so it's been really great to see, and we'll see you soon.